On this Saturday night, here comes the haze. Unhealthy smoke blanketing large swaths of Canada.
It takes a toll on your breathing and it takes a toll on your sleepiness.
The off-the-charts wildfires, flooding and record-breaking heat targeting the country.
There's no one that's going to not be touched.
Winnipeg standoff, despite a court ruling why some Indigenous protesters are staying put.
The request is that you comply with the order and then you move to the side of the road.
Hugs for heroes.
Just glad to be alive.
A patient reunited with the paramedics who saved his life. And a fairy tale finish at Wimbledon. Meet the first unseeded female champion who just made history.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
A thick gray pall smothers the city of Quesnel in central BC, leaving 25,000 people without fresh air to breathe. In Edmonton, the smoke blocks out the sun, and the air quality is rated at 10+, posing a very high risk to people's health. Good evening to you, and thanks for joining us. Millions of people across most of Western Canada are being advised to keep their windows and doors shut and to limit any time outdoors. Environment Canada has issued air quality advisories from central British Columbia to southeastern Saskatchewan, including all of Alberta. Smoke from fires in Western Canada is spreading as far as the Great Lakes, with the highest concentrations covering thousands of square kilometres stretching from north central BC all the way to the Arctic. The military is mobilizing to help the fight against the fires that have already burned more than 12,000 square kilometres of forest in British Columbia. Firefighters are battling more than 500 fires across the West. And as Megan King reports in our top story tonight, there's no relief in sight.
Already deemed the worst wildfire season on record across Canada, the epicenter has shifted to British Columbia. More than half of the country's active fires are now in BC, the majority caused by lightning strikes.
When these kinds of fires happen, when there are lightning strikes like this, it's often a storm that comes in and produces multiple fires simultaneously. And that can be problematic because it makes the response a little bit more complex.
To aid in firefighting efforts, Emergency Preparedness Minister Bill Blair approved a request for federal assistance Friday night, which will see military mobilization to BC.
We're still really early in the fire season, and I worry about, first responders, our firefighters just becoming incredibly exhausted. And so when federal assistance like this comes in, it's a welcome thing, in my opinion, because it just gives an opportunity for firefighters to have a break.
Blair's announcement comes just after a 19-year-old firefighter was killed by a fallen tree while battling a wildfire near Revelstoke, BC.
The whole community is reeling. Our province is in mourning for her death.
We're all still in shock because we can't really imagine someone that nice and just amazing human being leaving all of a sudden in such a really terrible way, but also really brave.
Fueling the fires, there's a concerning level of drought in the region with no significant precipitation expected.
Until we get actual good precipitation for a long period of time, that's what's really going to make a big difference.
And that impacts air quality. Environment Canada rates areas of Alberta, British Columbia and Saskatchewan as high risk, with the smoke bringing health concerns.
It takes a toll on your breathing and it takes a toll on your sleepiness and your tiredness.
Still early into the wildfire season, there's no respite from the smoke and the fires anytime soon. Megan King, Global News.
It's not fire, but flooding causing issues for residents around Montreal. People are still cleaning up after a powerful storm swept through the region this week.
We have to improvise since there's no electronics that kids nowadays use them a lot, so we have to go outside and play with friends.
More than 20,000 homes woke up without power this morning. Almost 800 Hydro-Quebec staff worked to restore service. At the height of Thursday's storm, more than 392,000 customers were without power. And around the world, it is extreme heat that continues to be the story for hundreds of millions of people. Here at home, parts of the Northwest Territories, Labrador, and Newfoundland are under heat warnings, and they're not alone. Thermometers in North America, Europe, Africa, and even parts of Asia are hitting record-breaking temperatures this weekend. Several meteorological agencies are urging people to stay cool and indoors if possible, with the sweltering heat expected to linger into next week in many places. In the United States, the Southwest is bearing the brunt of this latest heat dome, with temperatures in Phoenix expected to remain over 43 degrees for a 15th straight day. The National Weather Service has placed more than 110 million people under heat advisories, with warnings stretching from Florida to California and up into Washington state. Officials are urging Americans not to underestimate the impact of what they're calling an extremely dangerous heat wave mixed with smoke from our wildfires in some states. In Europe, hundreds have been forced to evacuate from the Spanish island of La Palma as the extreme heat fuels a fast-moving wildfire. Near record-breaking temperatures have also caused several major tourist attractions to shut down on the continent, with some needing medical attention under the sweltering sun. Medical attention was also needed for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today after an apparent bout with dehydration. The Israeli leader later issued a video statement saying he was in good condition, but urged Israelis to stay out of the sun and to drink water. In Winnipeg, a determined group of protesters remains defiant in the face of a court order to stop blocking the entrance of a city landfill. The group has been obstructing the main road into the Brady Road landfill for more than a week. They are pushing to have a nearby landfill searched for the remains of 2 murdered Indigenous women. The Manitoba government has said doing so would be too risky for workers. Now, while the injunction to clear the roadway went into effect Friday evening, so far police have not moved in to enforce the court order. Our Mike Drolet is in Winnipeg with the latest.
9 days in, the Brady Landfill protest is looking like a stalemate. The handful of protesters still there have traded barriers for a campfire. Last night, police liaison officers handed out copies of a court injunction requiring them to step aside.
The request is that you comply with the order and then you move to the side of the road. Okay? Yep.
It didn't take long for the protesters to give their answer.
With the injunction deadline passed, this has very much turned into a waiting and watching game. The media watching the protesters, protesters watching the media, and all involved are waiting and watching for the police to show up.
Until and if that happens, they wait and hope for an end to this politically charged standoff.
I'm here every night and I hear the dump trucks, and it's heartbreaking sound to keep hearing. And it's just an emotional roller coaster just to be here.
Jeremy Skibicki was charged last December with 4 counts of first-degree murder. The remains of one of his alleged victims, Rebecca Contois, was found in the Brady Landfill, and police believe Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron are buried in another landfill north of the city. But when a study found it would cost $184 million to search through the site while exposing workers to toxic chemicals, the city and province said it was too risky, prompting a scathing rebuke from the federal government.
You know, my reflection on this is that this has been dealt with in a very heartless way.
And now CUPE, which represents over 700,000 workers across Canada, has weighed in, suggesting the site be thoroughly searched and that they are willing to work with any authorities to provide support and expertise to any organization conducting a search. So, what to do?
Hey, yo! Take care of your blockade!
The standoff has taken a toll on Winnipeggers, some of whom have openly lashed out. Undaunted, the protesters continue to expect a police intervention, while hoping political leaders show up to negotiate.
There's no threats here, there's no aggression here, there's no violence here. So I don't know, I don't understand. Maybe they have better things to do, but their presence is not here.
Mike Drolet, Global News, Winnipeg.
Frustrations over the cost of rent in Toronto was on display in Canada's largest city. Residents and supporters of 2 buildings in Toronto's West End took part in what they're calling a rally for fair rent.
There ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people won't stop.
Tenants have been withholding rent payments from their corporate landlord since last month. They say rent has increased 3 times higher than the building's rent control guidelines.
Well, we hope a strong message will be sent to the landlords that tenants have had enough. We need rent control. Inflation and the cost of living in the city, combined with the lack of adequate affordable housing, has reached a peak, and people just can't survive with status quo.
The landlord has said the increases are a result of work done prior to it acquiring the building, and they're working with the federal government to increase the number of affordable housing units offered. They fled the horrors of the Taliban. Coming up, why Afghan refugees, including children, are now being arrested in Pakistan. Ukrainians fleeing Russia's ongoing war will soon have a new pathway for permanent residency in Canada. Starting in the fall, permanent residency will be extended to Ukrainians living in Canada with temporary status, as long as they have at least one family member living here. More details are expected before the program launches in October. The announcement from the federal government comes on the same day an emergency immigration program was set to expire. And the Canadian government is concerned about the fate of some of the thousands of Afghan refugees who are now living in Pakistan. They escaped fearing arrest and even death at the hands of the Taliban, who now rule Afghanistan. But now Pakistani authorities are questioning their right to be in that country, leading the Afghan nationals to live in fear of arrest and deportation. Global's Shagufa Danish spoke with some of those refugees in Islamabad.
Zohal Anwari has been staying inside, avoiding the Pakistani police, while she waits for her sponsorship case to be heard in Canada. Anwari was a human rights defender in Afghanistan. After the Taliban took power, she escaped to Pakistan with her family due to the fear of being detained by the Taliban. But now that fear is back.
Police of Pakistan arrest my husband. It's so difficult to us to release my husband. We gave to them money.
Zohal is the mother of 4 girls and has a 1-year visa. Their stay needs to be extended every 2 months at the Torkham border crossing 250 kilometers away. Pakistani police have started to search and arrest Afghan refugees whose visa have expired.
Life in Pakistan is so difficult.
It's not just adults, even children have been arrested. Arzu, a 17-year-old Afghan refugee, was ecstatic after winning a jiu-jitsu match, but had no idea she would soon be detained. Arzu and her coach were detained by the Pakistani police because their visa had run out. New refugees who came in the last 2 years do not receive cards from UNHCR. Instead, they receive UNHCR slips, which are not acceptable to the Pakistan police. She says the police were acting like they do not know the UNHCR and told her you should get a visa.
On the new arrival, Pakistan is not supportive of granting them refugee status. We are trying our level best. We are doing advocacy with them.
More than 1 million Afghan refugees are in Pakistan. 600,000 are new arrival who are waiting for their cases. They say they are fed up with the refugee detention and police asking for bribes. They claim the only way that they can get the Pakistani visa is through the black market. We sent several emails to the Pakistan government, but have not heard back. The Canadian government has pledged to bring at least 40,000 Afghan nationals to Canada by the end of 2023. So far, more than 33,400 Afghan refugees now call Canada home. Zohal is hoping her family will be next.
I request from Canada government process my case. I have small children.
Shagufa Danish, Global News, Ottawa.
Ahead, the freedom to fix why manufacturers are making it harder to repair our gadgets. Whether it's phones or computers, you've likely had a harder time getting your products repaired these days. In a story originally featured on The New Reality, Krista Hesse looks at what some see as a broken system for maintaining what we own and the growing movement to fix it.
Old radio in the 60s, more vintage turntables, I prefer repairing old stuff because I can actually fix it. Like, it comes in, it's fixed, I got a happy customer, and it's out the door.
Repair is in John Fidel's blood. American Electronics is a family-owned repair shop in Toronto's West End. John's father, Frank Fidel, started the business in 1973.
Back in the 70s and 80s, companies used to have parts counter desks. I used to ride my bicycle to these factories and pick up parts for my father.
A lot has changed since then. Parts counters have gone by the wayside, and technology has become more sophisticated and more difficult to repair, but not for the reasons you think.
There isn't any reason that the stuff we have today is harder to fix than stuff from 20 years ago. It's really the system that has atrophied. Manufacturers used to sell parts. Over the last 20, 30 years, they've systematically stopped doing that. Hey, I'm Kyle with iFixit, and we're gonna take some stuff apart today.
iFixit was Kyle Wien's radical response. It's a website that offers everything most manufacturers won't: repair guides, tools, and parts.
More and more these days, we get products from manufacturers and they don't have a plan for us to be able to maintain it.
That's hurting repair shops and fueling our throwaway culture. And it has grave implications for the environment and our wallets. Kyle is part of a growing movement of people pushing back.
Right to repair is the idea that if you bought it, you should be able to fix it.
But even skilled technicians like John have to go to great lengths to do simple repairs.
Once the product becomes out of warranty, we cannot call the manufacturers directly. We are referenced to a third-party logistics type companies, just basically warehousing companies.
Those companies will sell John an entirely new circuit board for a couple $100. But often, he just needs a tiny component part.
I've gotten quotes for boards that are more than 3/4 the price of the product. It doesn't make sense.
We absolutely can make products that last longer if we want to. Right now, the companies are making so much money selling us a new $1,000 phone every 2 years that they don't really have an incentive.
Companies argue they are protecting consumers' safety and privacy by restricting who's able to do repairs. And also that by withholding repair information and parts, they are safeguarding their intellectual property rights. The right to repair is about giving people more control over the things they already own. With the movement gaining momentum, big tech companies have begun to make some concessions. Apple has launched a DIY repair program. Google and Samsung now sell parts for their phones. Nokia and Microsoft are making more repairable products. But advocates say, in order to fix all our devices, we need to repair the entire system.
It's a fundamental human right to have access to the knowledge to how to fix all the things that we depend on for modern life.
Krista Hesse, Global News, Toronto.
Next, unseated and unstoppable, the unlikely winner of the Wimbledon women's final and the bet she made with her tennis coach. A magical moment at Wimbledon today as Marketa Vondrousova stuns the tennis world, becoming the first unseeded player to win the women's title. The unlikely Czech champion's family was in shock at the 6-4, 6-4 win, including her husband, who got there just in time after originally staying home to take care of their cat. The coveted trophy was held up by Vondrousova, who was ranked 42 in the world. She beat 6th seed Ons Jabeur, who was hoping to become the first Arab and first African woman to win a Grand Slam title. And that sentiment of not being done yet holds even greater meaning for one man in Halifax. Frank Whiteley suffered a heart attack last month, but as he lay there dying, some quick-thinking bystanders and paramedics took action to save his life. As Global's Vanessa Wright shows us today, Whiteley got a chance to say thank you.
Hugs of gratitude from the wife of Frank Whiteley, a Nova Scotian man whose life was saved in what he describes as a miracle.
I'm just glad to be alive.
On the morning of June 6th, Whiteley says all he remembers was walking to work. At some point, he went into cardiac arrest and was unresponsive on a bench on Quinpool Road in Halifax.
This was a situation where the chain of survival pretty much went textbook perfectly.
One bystander called 911 and began performing CPR. And shortly after, another bystander, Melissa Savoy, rushed to help until paramedics arrived.
I searched the Facebook everywhere just to try to see if he made it through, if I could find anything on him.
The 59-year-old was revived twice before making it to hospital and spent 2 days on life support.
So knowing that was like, well, I really escaped the bullet twice type of thing. So I was very, very lucky.
Now more than a month later, Whiteley's granddaughter arranged for a reunion between the communications officer who took the 911 call, the paramedics, and one of the bystanders who helped save his life that day.
It feels great. I was waiting for this day. We're just waiting for him to be better and be ready to meet us, and it was great.
Again, once we hang up that phone, we're just right on to the next one, and that's kind of it. That's all we get. So to hear something so great happen and be a part of it, it kind of reminds you why you started the job in the first place, and yeah, it's a nice feeling.
Paramedics say situations like these are a reminder of the importance of knowing how to provide basic medical assistance.
Just knowing how to perform CPR and how to use an AED can really increase someone's chance.
Whiteley says he is recovering well and is most looking forward to returning to his normal routine, something only made possible by the help of strangers turned heroes. Vanessa Wright, Global News, Halifax.
And that's Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and on behalf of our whole crew here, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is Grand Prix, Nova Scotia. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.